So my question today is it really worth it to have kids in a first world country? Is it worth it, first of all, to have kids? Second, to have a good amount of children? Nowadays, you have a lot of people talking about, oh, I just want one kid, which we know from a psychological point of view, that's horrible. You don't want to do that to your child. You don't want to have one child. The single child syndrome, it's a thing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on having kids in a first world country?
I mean, just with the thing you just said with the single child thing, it could be a very terrible experience for the kid. You know, obviously there are people that are gonna say, well, you know what, I'm the only kid and I'm fine. Okay, that's cool. But we're talking about in general cases, people. It's good to have a brother or sister with you. Like being alone in any situation is not fun. It's not good for people to be alone. We're meant to be relational. You know, obviously your parents are gonna leave this earth and it's gonna be you. And if it's only you here that you can lean on, it's gonna suck. It's gonna be a very painful thing when you need help. You know, you gotta go to somebody that maybe you don't really know will be there for you. You know what I'm saying? So it's a tough thing. So the whole single kid thing, I feel for the people that are in that situation because of those reasons, you know. And of course there are people that you can find that are good, but you know, if you have brothers and sisters, you don't need to find those people. Okay, people are gonna say, okay, what about if you don't wanna get along with your brother and sister? You still have a brother and sister to resolve conflict with. You know, you can get people want to stay enemies when they have a problem. Like, what's wrong? I don't understand when people have a conflict that they allow to rule them. And I'm not saying there aren't serious things that happen. Yes, we can get deeper into this. What I'm saying is you have brothers and sisters to make up that are blood family that you can hopefully lean on when you need help with something. They should be your first go-tos. If that's not the case for you, then, you know, of course there's issues there. So it is profitable to have a bunch of them, I would say. But then the question is, what kind of kids are you having? But let's go to, is it good to have kids in a first world country? Yeah, I think it is. You know, although we know we can't take anything with us when we die, and having kids is a way for you to build something to last for generations. Just with that idea alone, I would say it's good to have kids in general. You know, to where you're not just working for yourself, you're working for something greater and for others. You know, not everybody thinks like this, but I think it's a thing where when you have a family, you want to be in a position where you can give something when you leave, or leave something valuable when you leave. Because it's a great opportunity to be well established and to leave legacy and to leave something for the next generation to either build off of, to survive, or even to thrive. And having multiple kids, if you raise your kids well in a good nurturing household, they have a better chance of having a better life because they know things that they shouldn't do, and they're in a great space where they can thrive.
I think it's always worth it to have children. It's sad when people don't think about what happens to them when they reach old age. You know, there are times in the life of a parent that, frankly speaking, they don't know some things. You know, sometimes your kids will teach you a thing or two about technology, about how the world is now. So parents don't always have a grip on where the world is going unless they do their own research. But as far as our parents go, we can see that they're not always the most in touch. Is it worth it to have kids? Yeah, there are many tangible and intangible pros to having children. It gives you more responsibility. We understand that as human beings, the more proper responsibilities that we have, the better off we are. Managing our time, managing our finances, managing where we spend our time, all of those things. It makes us focus better. Usually when people don't want to have kids, it's because of two things. The first being trauma from their childhood. How their childhood went, they didn't like it. They're going to put that on their kid and say, I don't want to put them through that, but it's not up to them. But it is up to them to have kids, you know what I'm saying? But if you do have a kid, it's not up to you to say that I don't want the kid to go through a bad time.
Okay.
Hey, why don't you travel to Africa and see how happy those kids are? They're fine. Your concept of them having a good life is not reality for them. It's actually, that's why you're called a first world here, because your reality is different from someone who lives in a third world country.
Yeah. So point one is that they don't want them to go through the same traumas.
Point two is they don't have the financial standing to have kids, which you mentioned that we'll talk about that in a little bit.
I think another point is people don't want to have kids because of selfish reasons, because they don't want to have responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I would add a point 3 about because they don't want to do the work. They don't want to. They're just selfish in that way.
I think that's actually a movement that's going on right now. Is people are blatantly coming out and saying, yes, I am selfish. I don't care. I don't want kids.
It's crazy.
People are literally coming out and taking that. And it's like, okay, cool. That's absolutely fine. But is this a virtue or a vice? Is this a characteristic that you want to have for yourself? Do you want to embody that selfishness? Because frankly speaking, coming from a God created the world perspective, we're meant to procreate. 2 things on that. If you have 2 people who are psychopathic murderers and they come together and make babies, we know we would most likely not want them to procreate. That's just my opinion.
Ooh,
okay, before we get into all of that, we're just 2 guys having a conversation. Okay?
Oh man,
we are not professionals. We are not psychologists. You know what I'm saying? We are just having a conversation, and you guys are just in on our opinions. That's all it is.
Yes.
It's an opinion. So if you find gems in here, take it. If you don't, stick around and have some fun.
Yes, and one note here is that whatever D says, D stands alone, and whatever I say, we've talked about off the podcast. So.
What are you gonna say though about the 2 murderers thing?
Bro, like, do you think the 2 murderers, if they have a kid, do you think that kid is more subjected to being a murderer as well?
They're more subjected to being crazy. I don't know about murderer.
Hey man,
You know,
two murderers birth a murderer. I don't know if they're gonna birth an angel. But I find it very interesting of the different combinations we see with types of parents and then what type of kid they have. You know, It really baffles me. Some situations are like unexplainable to the physical realm. You can't explain it, you know, but if you look in the spiritual side, you'll be able to see everything and it'll make more clear.
I have a perfect story for that, and it fits to my next point. I was listening to a story on this guy that kidnapped this little girl and was planning on killing her. This is exactly the story. He was sitting in his car and there was a bus dropping off a kid or picking up kids. He said he saw, and this is the thing, people don't understand that the world is a spiritual place. Like, there are things and possession at work. People think when you're possessed by a demon, you are this crazy person that when you see a person who's possessed, you know exactly that they're possessed. This guy said he was sitting there in his car behind this bus and he saw a girl getting picked up at the bus stop. He looked at the girl and he said, I'm gonna kill her. And from that point on, he was a normal guy apparently, and he said, oh, I'm gonna kill her. That's my target. And for some time he monitored them, and he went into her house, killed the parents, and took the girl. Imagine you just a normal person, and all of a sudden you have a strong desire to murder someone. That's not normal.
That's not a normal thing, man.
And that falls to my next point, is people are scared to have children because they're afraid of how they're gonna raise them. They're afraid of how the kids are going to turn out.
Yeah, and I got an interesting point that I heard. There's a question that John MacArthur was answering. Should people be scared to have kids in today's age? And I'm like, bro, I'm really scared for my kids because of all these demonic things. But when I thought about it, the world has been demonic the whole time. There's been weird things going on from since the days of Canaan. It hasn't changed necessarily by having evil on earth. But what John MacArthur said that made me have a different perspective, he's like, it's a great time for them to come here. More people to share the gospel because this is their time. And we forget there's a time for everything. Them being in this time, God will equip them to handle whatever they need to handle. And that's one thing that I didn't think about. Like, God equips us with what we need and how we need to adapt in our lifetime.
You know, the generation before us actually didn't have much faith in us. You and I, our generation. They were like, our specific generation is horrible. You know, the music that we were listening to. Yeah. The twerking culture was now rising.
Oh, man, we should call it pop. Oh, dude, pop. Hey, what? Hey.
Yeah, we saw that. We gonna oh shoot, you're editing this one.
Yep.
Make sure to expand that video whenever you're doing it. Alrighty?
Cutting all that out. Alrighty.
Girls dressing crazy, guys looking sketchy. That started with our generation in a way, and it's like they didn't have hope for us, but look at us today. We have the good, solid, well-grounded people in our generation who are helping things kind of level out. And you're right. But you see the generation after you and I, we're like, dang,
they're gonna have
they're
it.
not gonna make it.
Yeah, so I can see the down spiral. Like everybody says that to the next one, because like we see things getting
Exactly.
crazier and crazier, but they're gonna come equipped to some capacity to manage what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Thinking about it is like, man, they're gonna have it bad, but they're gonna have their ways of adapting.
Most of them are gonna come equipped, but then some people are gonna come very well equipped to help lead the rest of the people, because in every generation there's some kind of leader helping guide a mass amount of people through stuff. You know, every generation has its a solid Christian preacher or teacher that helps guide and lead people in that time in theology and stuff like that. So it's awesome to see God work, and I think it's worth it to have a bunch of kids, because we're not, see, that's the thing. People are like, oh, society decides, you know, the good and bads of how things are. And it's like, you don't want that, because we have some crazy people in this society. We kind of want God to dictate and lead how things are, and he does, regardless of whether or not we like it. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a strong fear in some people of having kids, because they're afraid the kids are going to be crazy. They're afraid they won't know how to raise kids. Who knows how to raise kids exactly? Even the people that know how to raise kids, they're the ones studying kids. They're not raising a bunch of kids. They're studying how to raise them properly, and they give you the tools to raise your kids. So there's a difference between someone who is in the front lines of the war, and there's someone who is in the back, who's in command to kind of oversee things. And people kind of want to be both in command and in the front lines of the war, and you can't do that. You have to be here, and this person helps you, and you help this person. It goes back and forth. So I think people are equipped to raise kids. It's just fear, and I think a little bit of selfishness too. But lastly, it might be worth it to have a bunch of kids in this day and time, because you as a person, and I'm not saying good as in like righteous, pure, all-knowing kind of thing, but if you are a decent, good, moral standing person, if you know your left from right, if you know good from bad, if you know it's not good to murder, and you know it's good to serve and help others, maybe you should have kids, because when you teach them those virtues, guess what they do? You send them out into the world. And that's what legacy is built on. You teach your kids, and then your kids will have kids, and then your kids will have kids. And all of a sudden, you have a huge family or a whole bunch of people going out into the world with good moral understanding, who are decent people willing to serve and help their communities, and that's a great thing.
Yeah. I mean, look at those families that have like a line of pastor sons. You know,
It's pretty cool.
that happens for a reason. You know, man. Hey, drop your thoughts in the comments if you have anything to say about this.